Hello and welcome to Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller, joined as always by City Administrator Tim Vandall. Tim, the spring and start of summer have been very busy in Lansing. I know in late May we cut the ribbon on the new Bernard Park baseball softball complex. You and I were both out there. Beyond the youth sports angle, talk a little bit about what this project means in terms of making Lansing a more attractive place for development. And residential, commercial, and we were talking off camera, it's kind of a quality of life thing.
Absolutely, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. It's this huge quality of life project for Lansing's residents. It's so important for people nowadays when you're buying a home to look at amenities.
Right.
And we have this fantastic Parks and Recreation program. I'm not sure I realized how fantastic it was until I had children in the programs.
Right.
And once I had children in the programs, I would see parents who'd sign their kids up from Baser, Tonganoxie, Leavenworth, whatever. We just have this fantastic Parks and Recreation program. So it's this wonderful amenity. It's a quality of life amenity that is going to be really popular. You know, the other component of that, from a commercial development standpoint, I can tell you just in the first month that's been open, we have had people already reach out to us and say, this would be a great spot for XYZ tournament.
Right.
And we don't want to do that this first year. We're still kind of learning the facility and the intricacies of everything. But longer term, if that's the place where we can host some tournaments, you know, the city could potentially make some of our money back. But also, you know, if we're hosting a tournament, that could lend itself to hotel rooms, restaurants, people pumping gas, all of these different things. So while the city wouldn't be turning this huge profit hosting tournaments, if we could do a cooperative tournament with, the USD 469 or something like that, you know, all of a sudden we could have dozens of hotel rooms filled up, people eating at our restaurants. So there really could be some positive things. On top of all of that too, this was just a project the city council had been talking about for so long, and it was nice to kind of check one more thing off the list, because you know we bought Bernard Park in what?
09.
09, yeah.
08,
so
we've
owned it for quite a long time, and then we had to hit pause because of the recession. So now it's great that we've got baseball out there. The fact that we have irrigation out there will make it easier when we want to extend and improve our soccer fields. So there's just so many positives with those improvements out at Bernard Park. We're just thrilled about it.
Right, and you mentioned the potential for tournaments down the line. It's, I think in Ego Devo terms, it's commonly called spin-off. You know, when you build something and additional things want to locate by there to kind of pick up off of the energy. At the second June Lansing City Council meeting this month, there were details made public about the intention of Tractor Supply Company to locate their Lansing store in town center. So explain that project, but that's kind of, I think, the more interesting part of it. It's going to be a bigger store. It's going to move probably to a location that it might have some additional visibility, although the corner they're on now is very visible. But talk about what that means, and maybe it's not technically an anchor store, but what that means not only for TSC, but potential new tenants over there as well.
Well, you're exactly right. So a couple things. Their existing location, while it does have great visibility right at the corner of K7 and Eisenhower, right across from Quick Trip, it has access issues. I think both of those entrances probably technically should be right in, right out. So it's a challenging intersection from an access standpoint. It's challenging when they have their semis coming in bringing inventory. So there's issues at their current location. So we've been working with them and trying to figure out a compromise, a solution, and we were thrilled that we were able to come to an agreement for that parcel in town center. So this parcel will be it's either like an acre and a quarter or an acre and a half bigger than their current parcel. So it'll be a little bit bigger, won't have the access issues. I think one of the things that they're looking at doing is having a pretty large garden center. So almost similar to Home Depot and places like that, it will have a large garden center next to the store, because the actual store itself might be a little bit bigger in terms of square footage, but it's going to be comparable. But the larger part is that garden center.
And the parking.
And the parking is going to be a lot better as well. The other thing too that is worth noting though, so while some people might look at this and say, well, it's an existing business that's just moving in town, and that's true, also keep in mind their current property, somebody's going to want to buy that.
Right.
Somebody is going to want to buy that, and whether they're going to want to renovate that building or raise that building, like we just talked about, that's one of the best locations in all of Leavenworth County for additional retail, potential restaurants, or whatever.
Traffic counts.
Yeah, traffic counts. You look at, I want to say the traffic count there was around 30,000 vehicles per day at that intersection. So even though it's a Lansing business relocating to a different part of town, I think when you include TSC staying and somebody else purchasing that property up at K7 and Eisenhower, it's going to be a net increase in sales tax. And on the subject of sales tax too, keeping businesses in town is getting to be more and more important. So we passed a sales tax to help pay for this pool. We passed a sales tax 5 or 6 years ago to pay for DeSoto Road and Bernard Park.
Right.
So all of the sudden, if they were to look at other areas, that would make it kind of challenging for us to pay off some of these debt obligations. So that's why it was important to try to keep them in town. And like I said, I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody.
Do you think, and this is a question I'll ask now, but you're not going to be able to answer it with statistics until further down the line, while TSC we're not talking about a mega store going there, it is a bigger store and it is starting to populate town center. It'll be interesting to see when you are getting inquiries from other businesses that are sniffing around town center. Does TSC help? Because you've got an established business now that's going to be located over there.
I think it absolutely will.
Right.
I think it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of customers there per day. I think restaurants are going to see that and want to be there.
Right.
Not to mention, KCC already purchased that 12 acres directly south of TSC.
Right.
So all of this stuff is going to create synergy. I think it's going to create more growth. And that's why the city council was so excited about it. Like I said, it's going to be great for TSC, it's going to be great for the city, it's going to be great for the future owners of those adjacent lots.
Right. Okay, so while all that's going on, you and the staff are in the midst of crafting the 2024 budget. Where are we at with that? And this is going to be a recurring question, I think, probably till August. But where do things stand right now? I know, you've gotten valuations, we've got estimates, I guess, on property taxes, revenue coming in. How does that all fit into where you're at with the budget now?
Yeah, so we have our budget work session with the city council next week. We received our preliminary valuation from the county clerk a couple weeks ago. Lansing's valuation, I want to say, went up 13% or something.
On average, yeah.
On average, 13%. And you bring up a good point there. Someone's might have gone up 18%, someone else's might have gone up 6%.
Right,
so that percentage is an average. Right now we are in that process of reviewing department budget requests, plugging them in, kind of seeing what that does to the property tax rate. Some of the notable things that have been requested, we've been shorthanded in a couple of our departments for the last few years. So we're looking at replacing positions that were open in wastewater and the street department, so we're not quite so shorthanded anymore. We're looking at a few drainage projects. One of the things that's challenging about drainage projects, I think people don't think about them unless you get 2, 3, 4 inches of rain, and they're incredibly expensive. And some of the drainage projects that we want to work on are underneath arterial roads. So those are the types of drainage projects. You need to be sure they're engineered. You need to be sure you have your I's dotted and T's crossed, especially if you have 10,000 vehicles per day driving on top of this structure that you're putting in. So drainage projects are a lot more expensive than people realize. One of the other things that we were looking at doing, and again, this will go before the city council and they'll be the final decision maker, increasing some transfers so we can pave more roads, replace more curbs, things like that. Our public works director was telling us a few months ago, last year asphalt costs went up over 30%. So all of a sudden, we had this number of $940,000 that we would use to pave streets throughout Lansing. And 3 years ago, that would have tackled a lot of streets.
Right.
That same amount last year and this year didn't cover nearly as many streets. So that's one of those challenges that maybe sometimes people don't think about. Inflation nationwide, maybe even worldwide, impacts how many streets we can pave in little old Lansing, Kansas. So, we're going through the budget right now. I think we feel confident that there will be at least some type of decrease in the property tax levy. What that is, I don't know if it'll be 1 mil or 1.5 mil or whatever, but I do feel pretty confident that we'll be able to lower our property tax rate a little bit while also balancing keeping and retaining employees, doing drainage projects, things like that.
Well, and in the future too, and I know it's the 2024 budget we're talking about, but in the future too, you've got a pool coming online, and that's going to cost some money too.
Exactly, and we're going through a lot of planning meetings about our pool right now, and the consensus that we always hear from our consultants is most pools will make about 75% of their expenses back. So pools will rarely break even. So that's one of those things that we're going to have to look at. I know one of the ideas that bubbled up during the planning process, because again, we don't want this pool to touch property taxes at all. Perhaps, we could use a transient guest tax to help offset some of those pool expenses. So there's a lot of different things that we're evaluating in our budget right now. And so much of it, we've talked about this before, it's a balancing act.
Right.
Do we want to do 3 drainage projects and keep the mill levy flat?
Right.
Or do 2 drainage projects and drop it a mill?
Right.
There's this balancing act that we're working on right now. And we'll talk about these things with the city council next week and see how they shake out.
Right. Okay, we're recording this video in late June, and it's just before the annual fireworks show, which this year is going to be on July 1st. And people should know this already, but I'll have you announce where it's going to be this year. And moving forward, though, what could affect the fireworks show location in future years? And I think we've kind of touched on that by talking about development a little bit.
Yeah. So this year it's in town center. The council loved that it was in a central part of town. It's very walkable. People could park at City Hall or park wherever and see the fireworks from their car if they don't want to go out there. So there's a lot of benefits of having it at town center. However, with Bernard Park recently improved and potential development at town center, it's possible it could shift out to Bernard Park in the future. Now, so for folks who haven't been out to Bernard Park, we have, with those improvements, we have hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces, paved parking spaces out there. So that should make it a little bit easier. We have restrooms with running water out at Bernard Park now, so we wouldn't need quite as many porta potties probably.
Right.
So there's all of these benefits if we do shift it out there in the future. Not saying we will, but that's certainly an option, especially if TSC and KCC get rolling. So it could shift out there.
But I don't think it's a stretch to say there's going to be a question potentially about where it'll be in 2024. But eventually, town center is going to develop to the point where it squeezes out any large-scale event.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And one other thing too about having it in town center, there's positives and negatives with everything. Positives, it's walkable, it's central part of town. The negatives is it is pretty condensed in terms of things that we can do. I know when we've had it at more spacious locations, we would have 5, 6 bounce houses for kids.
Right.
We have to be at 4 because we're in a condensed spot. We've had more food trucks in the past. I think we have to be at 10 because we're in a condensed spot. So there's positives and negatives with having it out at town center, but we're excited about it this year.
Okay, finally, you just observed your 8th anniversary working for the city of Lansing. I saw that on LinkedIn. I think I gave it a like. But in your mind, you've been here for 8 years. I mean, it's weird because I remember your first day here. But what are some of the biggest changes you've seen? And maybe not just as a city administrator, but as a family man who's lived in Lansing the last 8 years.
There's been so many changes just in the last 8 years, driving up and down that K7 corridor and seeing, Quick Trip, a renovated Aldi, the car wash, Harbor Freight, Family Eye Care, Mutual Savings, all of these new businesses coming to town. That's just thrilling, and we're so thrilled and excited about that. Not only that, too, though, you know, you're talking about the family aspect of it. It's been so cool to see those improvements out at Bernard Park. It was really neat to see that pool question be approved. So all of these projects and goals and ideas that the city council laid out for me 8 years ago, like I said, we're starting to check some of them off the list. And one of those first projects that I had when I first came on board here, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was DeSoto Road. That was a project that was 10, 15 years in the making. I think Mayor Bernard and one of our city council members had gotten a federal grant, and we had it designed, but it had just stalled. And we were in danger of losing, I want to say, $1.8 or $2 million.
2.1, yeah.
Yeah, so the city council, you know, was pretty adamant that, hey, we don't want to lose this $2 million of federal funding we have. So that kind of lit a fire under me and our staff, and we were able to do that. We've been able to make those improvements out at Bernard Park. We've been able to tackle those wastewater projects and improve the quick direct intersection. So it's been really a fulfilling 8 years. And I'll tell you too, we just love the Lansing community. Such a wonderful school district, such a safe community. We've made so many friends here, lifelong friends, and my wife is working now. So I mean, we're invested in the Lansing community. We love it. It's been a wonderful 8 years, and hopefully we'll continue to see progress over the next several years.
All right, I've been speaking with City Administrator Tim Vandall for Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller.